So I just posted a video. It's called I Prefer Dating Black Women. I posted it on YouTube and Facebook. And if you go to the Facebook version of it and you go to the comment section, you're going to see that 100% of all white people that commented had nothing positive to say. Some of the comments expressed things like, I bet you're going to have a lot of black women flood your DMs. You know what's interesting about that? That wasn't the case. The case was that I got a lot of DMs from white women, not to flirt, but to express bitterness because I prefer dating black women. I've learned about white women that they're so used to being the center of attention and also the standard of beauty that if any of us non-white men do not prefer them first above all other women, they take offense to that. They look at you like there's something wrong with you. We as a society are so accustomed to this system pushing so much white standard of beauty propaganda that it has resulted in not just white women and white people, but even in us subconsciously to expect white women to be our preference collectively as non-white people. And this system also pushes so much anti-black women specifically, always attempting to demonize the black woman that we as a society, even as non-white people, even if it's subconsciously, we are expected to see and place black women at the bottom of the barrel. And that is why whenever us as non-white people not only claim but behave as if white women are our preference, it's completely normal because it's part of the program. It's completely normal because we are expected to be conditioned this way. For the same reason that if we go out of our way to reject white standard of beauty propaganda and claim and also behave like black women are our preference, for the same reason why it's completely normal and expected for us to collectively prefer white women, you then get the opposite reaction when you prefer black women, because we are not conditioned to prefer what has been demonized to be the worst, to be what we are programmed not to desire, not to want anything to do with. And yet, despite all of this demonization of the black woman, somehow, some way, black women are so creative and influential that even though our society is conditioned to view them as inferior, today when it comes to fashion, to style, to the way all other women want to look like, behave like, they always try to mold themselves after black women. Even if they don't even like black women, but they want to be like them. That's just the result of a society that have been conditioned to dislike a certain demographic of people, while at the same time, this demographic of people can't help but be so influential. But that's just one side of the coin. There's also another side of that coin. And that other side of the coin is called jealousy and envy. And if you're wondering, what do you mean jealousy and envy? What I mean is, generally speaking, non-black women are envious and they are jealous of black women. Allow me to elaborate. Objectively and generally speaking, if you look at what's trending as far as fashion, whether it be the way you dress, the way you do your hair, etc., as a woman, when you look at non-black women, they literally grab all of the styles that are created by black women. I mean, something as simple as you can literally see a lot of non-black women that express some sort of dislike towards black women, always complaining, always judging them based on black women stereotypes. But yet, look at the way these women that criticize black women, look at the way they dress. Look at the way they do their hair, the little baby hairs. Where do you think you learned that from? Black people are not a monolith. However, generally speaking, in today's time, as well as historically, black people are very artistic, creative, and influential people. They haven't only influenced America, but even Latin American countries, Asian countries, European countries. Generally speaking, people out there all over the world want to exploit, embrace, enjoy the culture of Black American people. That's just a fact. So how can a people that enjoy Black American art, fashion, style, etc., at the same time have so much negative things to say about Black American people? That's called jealousy and envy. I'm going to share a story today of the first time I dated a Black girl. Me coming from a very colorist and anti-Black culture from a Latin American country. I have in past videos already emphasized the colorism, the anti-Blackness in Latin American countries' collective culture. So I'm not going to go too deep into that this time. I'm just going to do my best to share this story with you without inserting too much historical elements into it. I was 17 years of age and she was 16. And very, very early on in our relationship, I remember walking on the street one time with her. We had just woken up in the morning. Yes, she part-time lived with me. Oh, Ricardo, she was 16, you were 17, she lived with you? We're going to get back to that, but let me just stick to the script right now. So we had just woken up. She got up to go to school. I had dropped out, so I was on my way to work, and we walked there because neither of us had a car. We're just minding our business, walking down the street, and all of a sudden, a car full of Mexican girls was passing by, and they slowed down right next to us, and then they rolled down the window, and one of them stuck their head out the window and said, "You could do better than her." And then they laughed and drove off. And she laughed. My girlfriend laughed. And I said, "What they say?" Because I didn't hear. I said, "What they say?" And then she said, "They said that you could do better than her." And I reacted, so stupid. And she said, "They're right though. It's true." And I said, "How is it true? And why are they right?" Like, it's true. You could do better than me. And I thought, why the hell would she think this way? She was going to high school, plus she also had a part-time job. Me, I just had a full-time job. So, one day, I went over there to her job to wait for her while she got out, because she worked at a Subway. And I remember going in there, and I ordered a sandwich while I waited. She was probably in the back cleaning or whatever she was doing. Another employee was in the front, and it was a white girl. And I walked up, and she was very nice. And I ordered my sandwich, grabbed it, sat, and I was eating it while I waited for my girlfriend. So then, shortly after, my girlfriend comes out from the back, and her and the white girl employee were talking a little bit. It looked like they got along really well. So after they talked a little bit, she came over in her uniform, my girlfriend, and she sat with me, and, she waited for me to eat. After work, my girlfriend came back home and told me, "Hey, remember that white girl that works at Subway where I work?" I said, "Yeah, what about her?" She was a really good friend of mine. Like, we were really, really cool with each other. This whole time, even before I met you. I said, "Oh, that's cool." And she says, Today she behaved really, really strange with me." I said, "Why?" "Well, she asked me who you were." I said, "Okay." She said, "Hey, who is that? Who is that cute guy that was with you the other day? Who is that cute guy that was with you yesterday?" "Oh, that was my boyfriend." "That's your boyfriend?" "Yeah." "Oh." And after that, her body language, her face expression, it just became very negative. And she didn't talk to me like she would normally throughout the whole day. Well, anyway, after that day, the white girl that worked there with her, she was never ever the same with my girlfriend ever again. Until the point where one day they actually started to verbally fight, and my girlfriend got fired for it. But that's getting too ahead of the story. I'm going to go back to the very beginning of how her and I both met. But I need to first stress this important detail before I tell this very beautiful yet tragic story. Because although I titled my video, "My First Black Girlfriend," this doesn't represent black girls, black women at all. Because black women are not a monolith. So what this really represents, more than anything else, aside from sharing an experience, I also want to share the experience of a Mexican guy that comes from a very colorist family, a very colorist and anti-black culture, and how that came into play while dating a black girl. More than anything else, that's what I want the focus to be. The reality is that we both lived in a very, very ghetto environment. We had very difficult upbringings, her and I, and we were also both very, very young. So I hope that the viewers do not see this as a form of me attempting to define black women or black girls based on this one black girl that I dated when I was very young. I want this all to be for educational purposes. I want you to study this, not just my personal experience, but also the cultural dynamics and how certain events in our individual lives affected our relationship based on race. So I had just moved into a new neighborhood. This particular neighborhood that I lived in was predominantly black. In the specific block that we lived in, there was mine and then two houses that contained non-black people. Everybody else was black. I was new, so I didn't know anybody. So my daily routine was just to come out, go to work, and come back home. I was 17. I didn't go to school though because I had dropped out recently. The first person that I met in that block after living there for a couple of days was this kid who had a sister my age. This kid was around 14, 15. He became the only kid that I would interact with whenever I'd come outside and I wasn't working. One of his sisters was just a little girl, but then the sister my age, from the get-go, as soon as she set eyes on me, there was already a thing there. It didn't take long after that for us to start dating. We dated for a couple of days, and then one day, for some odd reason, her cousin, who was much older than us, he was in his 20s, he came over to visit them. For some odd reason, he just didn't like me, and I guess he advised her to not see me anymore. And so, we stopped seeing each other, just on the strength of that. Her little brother still kind of talked to me here and there. However, after a couple of days passed by, since her and I stopped talking to each other, all of a sudden, there's this new kid that I'd never seen before, who would pass by every single day when I would come outside and get ready to go to work. So one day, I'm coming outside, and I see the girl's little brother passing by. But he was walking side by side with that new kid. That new kid was a white boy, at least white presenting. In my first experience with him, as he passed by, he was giving me a really bad look. I ignored it, but I noticed it. So I got in the car, was driven to work, and then came back home at night. And the next day, woke up, and somewhere like in the afternoon, around 2 p.m., same thing. I'm getting ready to go to work, and here goes that kid again, passing by and giving me a bad look. And this happened for about 3 days, maybe 4 days, and every day at the same time, as if he knew my schedule, he would pass by, giving me bad looks. I ignored it. More so at this point in my life, I had just gotten kicked out of the 3rd high school in the same year, all due to fighting. So the last thing that I needed to be doing in life was to fight anymore. So when this kid was passing by giving me a tough look, I just ignored it, and I'd get in the car and go to work. But then one day, that other kid, the girl that I dated, her little brother, when I was coming outside to go to work, he came over. He waited for me outside, and when I came outside, he said, "Hey, do you know who Nick is?" And I said, "Nick? No, who's that? You don't know who Nick is?" "No." You know that guy that passes by with me once in a while?" "Oh, yeah. What about him?" "Yeah, he doesn't like you." "Why?" "I don't know. He thinks you got a problem with him." "I got a problem with him? I don't know him." "You don't know him?" "No, I don't know him at all. Never seen him until he's passing by with you." "Oh, damn. What you want me to tell him?" "Nothing. I don't know him. Whatever." All right, that was it. So the next day, as I was coming outside to go to work again, this kid, along with Nick was his name, was passing by across the street again. And this time he was giving me a tougher look. Before he was just walking, straight down the road. But this time he actually turned his body as he was walking away, but turned his body to give me a tough look. And I noticed it. So I wasn't intimidated by him, but also wanted to avoid creating conflict with somebody that potentially knew a lot of people in the neighborhood that I was going to be living in. So as I got in my car and I was on my way to work, I started thinking, okay, should I walk up to him the next day when I see him walking by and just introduce myself and say, "Hey, man, I ain't got no problem. Everything okay, man? I'm sorry if I did anything." I was trying to go about it that way, to be honest, just to avoid drama. However, there was something else waiting for me when I got off work. And this is what it was. As we're pulling up into the neighborhood, right at the entrance, there was a large group of people posted at the corner in a circle as if waiting for somebody. Some of them were holding like baseball bats, crowbars, etc. And I just got the gut feeling that that was for me. So as we drive up into the driveway and I get out the car, I walk in the house, lock the door, get out of my work clothes, go shower. And then when I got out the shower, I went in to go put on some sweats and, a tank top to go to sleep in. And all of a sudden I hear a knock on the door. And I knew that this knock on the door had something to do with Nick and that group of people on the corner. So I opened the door, and I had one of those little chains on the door, where you open it, but it only cracks open the door a little bit because of the chain. And there was this black girl right there. She was pretty, very pretty. She was fine. And when I opened it, because I assumed they had to do with trouble coming knocking on my door, the way that I answered was, "What do you want?" Like that, straight up. And so the girl that was there, she kind of jumped back a little bit. She's like, "Whoa, are you Ricardo?" "Yeah, why?" "Oh, Nick wants to fight you." "Who's Nick?" "Nick, you know the Puerto Rican kid?" "No, I don't know any Nick. I don't even know anybody here. I'm new." She says, "You don't know who Nick is?" "No. So why you want to fight you?" "I don't know." "What? Okay, you want me to tell him that you don't want to come out?" And as much as I wanted to say, "Yeah, just leave me alone," that's not how reality works in these type of neighborhoods. And I knew because the neighborhood that I had just moved away from was just like this. That if you don't go where you're being called to fight, that fight will come knocking on your door. And that's what happened to me prior to this in the old neighborhood. So I learned from that. And I said, "No, tell him I'll be out there in a minute." She said, "Okay." So I closed the door, locked it, and I went to talk to my brother. I said, "Hey, I'm going to go beat somebody's ass real quick. Make sure that my mom doesn't come out or doesn't find out. Just stay here. And for whatever reason, if my mom comes out, and asks where I'm at, just tell her I went to hang out with a friend or something. But don't tell her that I went down the street to go fight somebody." "Oh, what about me? You want me to come with you?" "No, I don't need your help. Plus, I need you to be here just in case my mom comes out and she starts asking questions. Make sure she doesn't come outside because there's a group of people waiting for me down the street. And if she comes out, she's going to see it. And more than likely, I'm going to get jumped tonight. And I don't want her to see it or to even find out at all about it. So just stay here." He said, "All right." So here I go with my sweats on, my tank top. I open the door, walk out, and here's that girl. Now, although this Puerto Rican kid's name was actually Nick, from here on out, I'm not going to use the real names of anybody in this story that I'm sharing, just to protect the identities of these individuals. So I'm going to give this girl a fake name. I'm going to call her Nicole. I don't know, just random, okay? Just to avoid from actually identifying her real name. So I come out, and she's there waiting. And I didn't know she was waiting for me. I thought she went over there to tell them that I was going to come, etc. And I said, "Did you tell them I was coming or not?" And she said, "Yeah, I went to tell them that you're coming." "Oh, so why are you here waiting?" "Well, I was waiting for you." "Okay, let's go over there then." So her and I walking side by side over to the group of people. And she talks to me a little bit on our way over there. "How long you live here for, etc.? "I just moved here a couple of weeks ago." "Well, my auntie, she lives right here. She's your neighbor. I come over here and stay the night once in a while. You know her?" I was like, "I don't know nobody." She said, "Oh, okay, so you're new." Like, "Yeah, I'm new." "Oh, okay. What is your name?" I said, "My name's Ricardo. What about you?" "My name's Nicole." "Oh, nice to meet you." "So, if you don't know this guy, why are you going to fight him?" I'm just trying to get this out the way. I really rather not fight, to be honest. It's just this guy, whoever this is, has been trying to fight me, I guess, for some time, and I have no idea why. I'm going to find out, maybe, but whatever. I'm just trying to get this out the way already. So we're approaching the group of people, mostly guys and like 2 girls. So 3 with Nicole. And in the middle of this group is that little white boy, Nick, the Puerto Rican. So I walk up to him, and this close, and I act like I don't know who Nick is, but I want to make sure that I at least attempt to inflict a little bit of intimidation by being face to face with him. And I just say, "Who the F is Nick?" And everybody's looking around. "Who is Nick? Somebody named Nick is trying to fight. Which one of you is Nick?" And everybody finally points to this little white boy. And then I look at him, and I'm like, you trying to fight me? Why?" He says, I'm not trying to fight you. "This dude right here and now this girl right here have been trying to pull me out the house because this guy named Nick's trying to fight me. So are you trying to fight me or not?" "Nah, man, I don't even know you." "So y'all just wasting... Anybody here want to fight?" Everybody's looking at each other. "So y'all just wasting my time for nothing?" Man, I turn around and start walking away. And all of a sudden, all these other guys, including the couple of girls that are there, are talking so much shit to this little white boy. Hard. Yeah, you're a bitch, blah, blah, blah. Talking all kinds of shit. Why you scared? Blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you something. Although I think I only lived there for like a year total, after that night, I never saw this scrawny little white boy ever again. It's like he disappeared after that night. The next day, as usual, got in the car, went to work. And once in a while, before leaving work, because I worked at a restaurant, I would take some food to go. Usually it'd be like a mushroom burger with some fries, which in this particular night is exactly what I took home. And when I got home, I came out the car and I decided to chill outside. But it was only because the girl Nicole, I saw her sitting by the steps at my neighbor's house outside. And since the night prior, I didn't have the opportunity to really talk to her like I wanted to. This night, as I was pulling up to the house and I saw her outside with another friend of hers, I decided, okay, let me see if I can make a little move here. So we pull up. So as I'm chilling outside with my little to-go box with the burger and fries inside, all of a sudden, Nicole says, hey, I look over there. Which I got really happy because I was literally going to stand there and trying to figure out how I can go about getting her attention. But it looks like she helped me with that. So she says, hey. And then she says, you remember me? I said, yeah, of course, Nicole, right? She says, yeah. And she says, your name's Ricardo? Yeah. Hey, how you doing? I was like, I'm just here chilling, just got off of work. What about you? She's like, yeah, I'm just chilling with my friend. And I looked at my food and I said, hey, you hungry? And she says, yeah. You want to share this burger and fries with me? She said, really? Like, yeah, you want to? Yeah. So then she talked to her friend just for a bit, and then she started walking on the steps because they lived in a duplex. So there were stairs to go up to the second floor. So she was sitting up on those steps with her friend. So she started coming down those steps, and I placed my to-go box with the food on top of the car just to shake her hand. I said, hey, how you doing? I didn't get to really meet you properly last night. She says, yeah, I know. I'm like, anyway, I'm sorry that we met under those circumstances, but nice to meet you. She said, I didn't really know him either, but I'm very familiar with all them people. I was like, yeah, it's cool. Let's just leave that alone. I said, anyway, I got a mushroom burger with fries. You ever had a mushroom burger? No, never had it. You willing to try? She says, I'm hella hungry. Right now, I'm willing to try something new. I'm like, okay. So I broke the burger in half. I told her, look, I don't eat that many fries, so eat your half of the burger and get as many fries as you want. So we're just chilling outside eating the burger. And I will say this. I was having a great time, but also a little bit worried that my mom would either peek out or come out and notice that I was hanging out with a black girl. But that didn't happen, and we did end up having a really great night. After we're done with our food, we talked a little bit, and she says, well, I don't live here, but I come here like just on the summers. But now that I met you, I'm going to come more often just to hang out with you. I said, okay, yeah. I more or less kind of laid out my work schedule to her just so she'd know when I'm home and when I'm not. That way she doesn't come looking for me when I'm not home, etc. So this whole me going to work in the afternoons and me coming home with a to-go box and some food was like our dates every night, her and I. She would literally be there every night waiting on those steps. At first, it was with her friend, but eventually, it was just her by herself waiting for me every single night. And this is what our relationship was in the beginning. Ironically, her and I never verbally agreed that we were in a relationship, but one of those nights while we're hanging out and eating outside in the driveway, I just felt comfortable. And I gently, cautiously pulled her towards me to see if she was okay with it. And she was okay with it. You know that look that you give a person where you're trying to communicate with your eyes that you want to kiss them? Well, I kind of gave her that look as I pulled her towards me. And she gave me the look of, yep, you can go ahead. So we had our first kiss. And that was how we made it official. Because we never orally said that, you want to be my girlfriend and stuff like that. We just became it. And I remember on my days off, which was Monday and Tuesday, she decided to invite me over. So when she invited me over, which I shared on the last video, I came in and they were watching Friday. And they just told me, hey, come in. And, you know, I got comfortable. I sat on the sofa. She sat right here in front of me. I held her, watched the movie. They offered me some food. And we just hung out. And it was a great time. So that was on a Monday, on my day off. So come Tuesday in the morning is when I had that conversation with my mom about, hey mom, how would you feel if I had a black girlfriend, etc. I already shared in the last video how that went. So that Tuesday on my day off, I told my girlfriend, hey, I wanted to see if you wanted to come over, and instead of hanging out in the driveway all the time, maybe you could come inside and we could watch a movie at my place, you and I. And she says, really? I said, yeah. I said, okay. So I was nervous as hell. And I remember the whole time while I waited for my girlfriend to show up, I was literally in my room looking out the window. I could see the whole street. And every couple of minutes, I was nervously looking out the window to see if she pulled up. And all of a sudden, I see a car pull up, right? And I see her sitting in the passenger side. And I said, okay, that's her. And the car stopped in front of my house. And all of a sudden, my phone rang. Hello? She says, hey, Ricardo, I told my mom that I'm not going to be next door, that I'm actually coming over to your house. Is that okay? I said, yeah. She wants to meet you. Is that okay? I said, yeah, of course. I'll be outside. I was nervous. I don't know if that was a good or a bad thing. So I come outside. I approach the car. I walk over to the side of her mom's window. I said, hey, how you doing? My name's Ricardo. Nice to meet you. She shakes my hand. Hey, Ricardo, how you doing? So you and my daughter are dating? So I looked at her and then at the mom and nervously. We're dating. Is that okay? Yeah, I just want to make sure because this is the first time she's ever asked me to drop her off at a boyfriend's house. And I was confused because your boyfriend is neighbors to my sister, her aunt. Like, oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, well, I see her there all the time. And like one day we just said hi to each other and we started talking. And before you knew it, we're just hanging out together. And well, here we are. So I'm going to trust that she's going to be safe and you're going to treat her well while she's here. I said, of course. So I walked her inside, and my mom was there in the kitchen. I took her over to my mom. I said, hey, Mom, this is Nicole. Her family lived next door. So Nicole says, hi. And then my mom says, hi. And that was it. My mom looks at me and in Spanish says, ask her if she's hungry. Offer her something to eat. And I looked at her. I was like, hey, my mom made some food. You want some food? We ended up eating there at the table. We went to the bedroom, watched a movie, hung out, etc. And as the afternoon was becoming nighttime, I was like, hey, you think you should call your mom to pick you up because it's getting late? She says, no, I'm not supposed to go home. My mom was dropping me off with you, but after we're done hanging out, you and I'm supposed to go to my aunt's and just stay the rest of the week right there. And this is pretty much how this girl lived. She lived with her mom, but was hardly ever over there. She was always here next door. Always. It was very rare when she was actually at her mom's. And of course, eventually I learned that there's just a lot of drama that was happening at her mom's house. And also I learned that she had a different father than the rest of her siblings. So her mom and her new boyfriend, along with their new kids, they lived in that house as a family. And she was kind of treated like the outsider, like the daughter who was not part of this family, whose father wasn't around. And this is something that she shared with me a little later down the road. Because I asked her, hey, why are we staying here? Why aren't you ever at your mom's? And then she started telling me there. I go over there, my stuff is over there, but they don't really want me over there. I said, okay, I understand. And let me tell you something. Our relationship was very beautiful. There was never an argument. There was never any kind of conflict. Our relationship, yes, we were very young, but our relationship was just about enjoying our presence, our company. That's literally all that our relationship was. We didn't care about who had this or how much money you make. We didn't care about who has this, who doesn't have that, how much money you make. None of that. And I really, really, truly appreciated this. And I know, and I stress this, black women are not a monolith, but I promise you that every single time that I dated a black woman, they have never cared about what I have, don't have, how much money I make or don't make. Every single time that I've experienced a black woman wanting to be with me, they just liked me for who I was. And I can't say the same about women of other races. Not saying that women of other races are gold diggers or are only with you to see what they could gain. But in my personal experience, that has mostly been the case. in my relationships with non-black women. I don't mean that to disrespect anybody, because I am not trying to in any way, shape, or form demonize women of other racial, national, cultural, ethnic backgrounds at all, I promise. But I'm being very sincere about my individual experience. That when it came to dating a black girl or a black woman, I have never experienced any of them wanting to be with me because of my material belongings, because of my status, because of any superficial anything. They just really liked me. They like Ricardo for the person that he is. There was literally only one Mexican girl that I dated later on when I was 20 that she was with me because she actually liked me. That's the only one and the only time. But that's another story for another day. Right now, we're gonna stick to the script. I believe that the reason our relationship, her and I, was so beautiful was because we didn't care about material things, how much money you make, how much money do I make. We really didn't care about any of that. As long as we had a couple of bucks on my day off to go hang out, that's all that mattered. That's truly all that mattered. We were so happy. Or I'll speak for myself. I was so happy. And I saw it in her face and her body language that she was so happy. Just being with me. We just seemed very happy being with each other. And that is when a relationship is at its best. When you don't care about anything. As long as we have enough and we get to enjoy each other's company. One of the things that I began to experience from her family side is that as our relationship grew and we were already like 3-4 months in, I remember her aunt that lived next door, one time she caught me slipping by myself out there and Nicole wasn't around, and she walked up to me. 2 of her aunts did this, but in this particular case, the one that lived next door, she came up to me and said, "Hey Ricardo, can I talk with you?" Yeah, sure. "You and Nicole have been together for a while now. You're taking her seriously?" "Yeah, of course." "Okay, because she's had 2 boyfriends before you, and they don't treat her right. They refer to her as my piece." I said, "My piece?" "Yeah, like my piece. That's my piece." "My piece?" "Yeah, you know, like some guys say, that's my side piece." Yeah. Well, they refer to her as my piece. The 2 guys that she has dated, they were very different than you. Very, very different. You are much, much different than the guys that we are all used to. We're not used to meeting guys like you. I didn't take it as a negative thing, but I didn't know what that meant. So I said, I don't know what that means. Like, what do you mean, guys like you? How am I? And she says, well, we're used to guys that are like pimps, that are dealers, that are always getting locked up. You're this guy that actually goes to work, isn't out there in the streets getting in trouble. She's like, you're just different. Oh, that's a good thing? She says, yeah, it's really good. We want that for her. Okay. And then she says this, I kind of just don't know what you see in her. What I see in her? Yeah. What do you mean? Like, what do you like about her? Are you sure you're not just messing with her because she's your neighbor? She's easy to access? No. I like her. Okay, Ricardo. I believe you. I just want to make sure that my niece is not getting played. No way. And this kind of became a thing. Her side of the family kind of questioned me liking her. And I remember one time I came over to her aunt's house and we were there as usual watching a movie together. I was sitting on the sofa. She was sitting right here. But instead, this time of sitting right here, she actually sat on the floor. So she gave me a brush so that I could brush her hair the whole time while we watched the movie. And this particular night, she had invited a friend of hers, which was a Mexican girl. And she was there. And the whole time, as I was brushing her hair, as we watched this movie, that girl was just giving me dirty looks. And I didn't know why. So when the movie was over, Nicole told us to wait for her outside. Meanwhile, me and her friend would be outside by ourselves. Her Mexican friend straight up just looked at me and said, what do you see in her? And I looked at her and I'm like, what do you mean, what do I see in her? Yeah, like, I don't get it. Well, that's your friend, ain't she? Yeah. So what do you see in her that caused you to be her friend? Well, she's a really good person. That's the answer. I guess. What do you mean you guess? What else do you want there to be? Okay, she's a good person, but like, what about, you know? No, I don't know what. You're not one of those guys that say looks don't matter, are you? I said, no, yeah, looks do matter. And she says, then? I said, yeah, she's cute as hell. And she's like, what? I was like, she's not? She's like, whatever, you're sitting there brushing her nappy ass hair. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? She's like, I'm serious, dude. Like, what are you trying to do? You trying to impress her family? I looked at her and I was like, and you call yourself her friend? Wow. You know what? I'm gonna go home. If she asks where I'm at, tell her I went to the house. You go ahead and wait for her by yourself. So I went home, and a couple of minutes later, Nicole came over, and I didn't tell her about her friend and the comments that she made that night, but honestly, I did tell her because I thought that it was the only right thing to do so she could know what kind of friends she's got. And if I'm her man, and part of my role is to protect her, is to also protect her from fake-ass friends. And I felt like I had to tell her, hey, that's not your friend. She said all these negative things about you, including some racist shit. If you're gonna be her friend, don't bring me around when she's around, because I ain't trying to see her. But thankfully, she cut her off. And probably around 8 to 9 months into our relationship, I was getting ready to leave that neighborhood and move somewhere else. And I told her, I said, hey, I'm gonna be moving literally to another town. I don't know how I'm gonna see you anymore. You living here, kind of, and then like partly living at your mom's. And then she says, well, I could just come live with you. I'm like, is your mom gonna be okay with that? And she says, Ricardo, my mom's entire goal is to somehow find a way for me to move out her house. That's why I'm barely even there, and she always makes me stay over at my auntie's house. I said, are you sure you want to live with me? She says, of course I do. I said, grab your shit. She says, really? Grab your shit. Grab all your shit from your mom's and meet me here. You're coming with us. Because I was moving with my family, of course. And she did. She called her mom. Her mom came over with her stuff. And her mom had a serious talk with me. She said, so your family is okay that my daughter's moving with you guys? And I said, yeah, they know we love each other. And they're perfectly okay with it. She says, okay, well, take care of my daughter. I was like, I will. Make sure that after you guys are settled in, she sends me the address where you guys are going to stay just for whatever reason, etc. That way I could at least know where she's staying. I said, okay. And then she said this. And if for whatever reason, Ricardo, something goes wrong, please don't put your hands on my daughter. If you need her to leave your house, if you can't stand her anymore, because I know how she is, she could be very annoying. If something bad happens, if she does anything that you don't like and you want her to leave, just call me and I'll come get her. But please don't abuse her. And I leaned in her window of her car and I said, that's never going to happen. And she says, Ricardo, I believe that you believe that's never going to happen. And the reason why you are able to be in a relationship this long with my daughter is only because you haven't lived with her. But now you're about to live with her. And you're about to find out how she really is. And let me tell you something. There's a reason why everywhere she tries to stay with her aunt, with her other aunt, with her uncle, it's only a matter of time before they kick her out. She just can't help it. And I said, she just can't help what? You're going to find out, Ricardo. But whatever the case, I believe you care about her. I believe you love her. But I also know my daughter. So when you get tired of her, please call me and I come get her. But please don't hit her. I was so confused. But whatever the case, here we go to the new place. And let me tell you something. Our relationship, when we moved to the new place and we lived together, was amazing. It was so good. I got the opportunity to wake up every morning with her right there laying next to me. And I'd get up and kiss her on the cheek every morning. Every morning I'd kiss her on the cheek and she just smiled. And I'll simply just say, I love you to her. And she would just say, I love you too. And I just say, I'm going to get ready for work, okay? She says, and I'd get ready for work, and shortly after, she'd also have to get up to get ready for school. And this was our routine every day. It was like a perfect relationship with no arguments, no fighting, no drama. We really enjoyed each other. But then something really horrible happened. Really horrible. We're both hanging out, having a good time one day, and all of a sudden, her phone rings. And she answers, and she says, oh, it's my mom calling. Hold on. She says, okay. And after a few seconds, Nicole starts crying and screaming to the point where she even throws a phone. And I'm just confused, like, what the hell? And she's just hysterically crying, screaming. She falls to the ground. I'll go over there, and I was like, babe, what's going on? And she's uncontrollably crying. And I don't know what to do. I'm just trying to hold her. And then she starts punching the ground. Luckily, we were on the grass. And finally, after a couple of minutes, she gets up. She's still crying, but she kind of calms herself. And I said, what's going on? And she says, my brother just got unalived. And I say, what happened? My mom said that this Mexican boy unalived my brother. And you know, although this had nothing to do with me, because it was a Mexican guy that unalived her brother, for some odd reason, I felt some discomfort. Like somehow, some way, a form of like guilt. Like my people did this to you. You know what I mean? And I realized that that wasn't just the energy on my side, on her side too, because her and I never had issues with each other, about each other, in our relationship. We're just great. But after that, I want to believe and assume that a combination of the loss of her brother in itself, the fact that a Mexican guy did this, it had a very deep and serious effect on the way that she saw Mexican people. And also the accumulation of the fact that our relationship on a private level, it was great. But publicly, almost everywhere we went, there was always Mexican people that expressed with their body language, with their face expression, with the way they looked at us, expressed like they had a problem with us being together. Something as simple as her and I going to a restaurant, and it'd be a Mexican restaurant, and like the waitresses sometimes in Spanish amongst each other, I would hear it. They'll say something like, mira ese mexicano con esa pinche negra fea. Stuff like that. Just simple stuff like that. And my girlfriend would always giggle about it. But I feel like her brother being unalived by a Mexican dude, she could no longer giggle about it anymore. And I think the accumulation of all those little negative things from Mexicans expressing negativity towards our relationship, I think it finally just sunk in for her. And she ended up going to her mom's house and stayed with her for like a week as they grieved the passing of her brother. But after that week, when she came back to stay with me, she wasn't the same person anymore. And although we were very young, I was very young, I somewhat understood, at least attempted to. So I did my best not to hold it against her. I tried to be objective about it. But eventually, the resentment that she had, or that she was developing from the unaliving of her brother, she began to express it more and more, to the point where one night I was sitting there rewriting a manuscript that I was working on from a novel that I eventually published known as A Life of Sin. And I was sitting at the edge of the bed while she was laying down. And at this point, she would throw little racial remarks here and there about Mexicans or against Mexicans. And normally I wouldn't mind them. But this particular night, she was going a little harder than usual. And before all that, the way she spoke to me was very sweet. Like, hey, babe. Like, very, very sweet. But after the unaliving of her brother, she spoke to me with resentment. For example, as I was sitting there writing, she said to me, what are you doing anyway? What are you writing? That's how she spoke to me now. Before, she was like, hey, babe, what are you writing? Or what are you doing? Now it was, what are you doing? What are you writing? She couldn't help it. And I said, oh, I'm just working on something known as A Life of Sin. And she says, why are you writing all the time? I don't know, it's what I love to do. You know that. That's how you met me. You do that too much. What man writes all the time on his diary? It's like, it's not a diary. It's a novel. It's a manuscript. I want to publish this. And she says, why don't you do something that real men do? And I look at her, I was like, what does that even mean? She says, you look like a F word, sitting there writing like a woman all the time. And I just looked at her and I said, you have a problem with me writing? And she says, I don't have a problem, but you should have a problem. You should do something more manly than that. I said, okay. And I just kept writing. And she just stared at me while she was there tucked in bed. She was just giving me a really dirty look. And she would just say little things here and there, like talking under her breath, negative things. And I think the fact that I ignored and didn't respond to any of the negative remarks that she was saying under her breath, I think that pissed her off even more. So just out of nowhere, as I was sitting on the edge of the bed and she was right here tucked, right? All of a sudden, as I'm writing, she just kicked me right on the ribs really, really hard. And I think that she underestimated how hard she kicked me, because when she kicked me, it just threw me off the bed and I hit my head on the wall. And when that happened, she immediately got out of bed and ran to the bathroom and locked it. And I got up and I walked over to the bathroom and I was trying to open it and it was locked. And I was like, she's like, what do you want? I was like, why'd you do that? She's like, go away. We don't have to treat each other like this. She's like, go away. I said, come outside. We need to talk about this. She's like, no. I was like, how come? You're going to hit me. I was like, I will never in my whole life hit you. Come outside. No, you're gonna hit me. I'm gonna go back to the bed. I'm gonna wait for you. I promise nothing's gonna happen, but we need to talk. We can't treat each other like this. So I'll go back to the bed and I just sit there the whole time. I'm no longer gonna write. My mood is all the way off. Right now, I just kind of want to get to the bottom of this. So eventually, honestly, it took more like 30 minutes. She came out and she cautiously walked over here. And I don't remember what she was holding, but whatever it is that she got from the bathroom, she was holding it as she approached, like a weapon. And I looked at her and I said, you don't need that. And she said, you're going to hit me. Have I ever? She says, no. Why would I now? Because I hit you. I said, that's not the way it works. I said, come here. Sit right here. Sit right here. And she holds the thing. I don't remember what it was that she held, but she held something. And then she cautiously walks over and she sits. And I gently grabbed her hand, the same hand that she was using to hold whatever it was that she held. And I just grabbed that thing and I said, you don't need this. I love you. And I removed it from her hand, threw it on the ground, and I said, first of all, I will never hit you. But also, you can't be hitting me either. And she just has her head down the whole time. You can't be hitting me either. We shouldn't treat each other like this. I understand that what happened to your brother is something you'll never be able to get over. It's something that you are going to have to learn how to live with. And I'm sorry. And I know that because it was a Mexican guy who did this, I know that you look at me a certain way now. And because this is so, if you're going to feel and have resentment towards Mexicans, including me, you need to figure out if you should still be with me or not. Because if you're going to have resentment towards us and towards me, we shouldn't be together. It will never work. You'll hate me. And eventually, I'll hate you. So are we going to be able to be together in peace, happy, like we used to? Or do you think that what happened to your brother, which I'm very sorry it did, but do you think that's going to affect the way you see me and the way you feel for me? And she says, I don't know how to feel, Ricardo. I said, look, let's go to sleep, okay? It's late. You have to get up in the morning, go to work, go to school. Let's just go to sleep and we'll talk about it tomorrow, okay? She goes, we go to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, usually I'm the one who wakes up first, but this time she woke up first. And when I opened my eyes, she was already there fixing herself in the mirror and everything. When I woke up, I was just looking at her do her makeup and getting dressed. And when she noticed that I was awake, the first thing she said was, do you have a headache from last night? I said, from last night? Yeah, you hit yourself in the head. I said, oh, no, I'm all right. And she says, damn, because you hit your head hella hard. And then she laughed about it. And yeah, when she laughed about it, I felt offended, but it was whatever. So I got up, I went to go brush my teeth, etc., and then came back in the room and started getting dressed for work. And we're both looking at the big mirror that we had there to get dressed and everything. And as I was lying there in bed, and she was there getting ready, she was just talking all kinds of shit. She just couldn't help it. Eventually, after all that shit talk that she was doing, and she realized that it wouldn't get to me, she wouldn't get a response from me. When she was done getting ready and everything, she grabbed my deodorant, and she says, hey. And I looked up, and she launched it at me, and boom, right in my face. And it hurt. And then she ran out, and she left. And let me tell you something. It was right there and then when I realized that this was over. And this was just the beginning of the iceberg. It was never going to get better. So I decided, right now I'm going to get up, going to get ready for work, but I have to talk to her after I get off of work and tell her this relationship is over. And I did. When I got back from work, and she got home from also work because she went to school and then to her part-time job, we both came home and I had a talk with her. I said, listen, I can't be in this relationship anymore. And at this point, we were already going on 2 years. And I told her, we can't do this anymore. And she didn't accept. She says, nope, you're not going to dump me. Nope, we're going to be together. We're going to figure it out. I was like, there's nothing to figure out. Whatever you're going through, I am unable to help you with it. If anything, I seem to be a contribution to the problem because I'm Mexican. So I'd rather just quit right now before it gets worse. And then we both argued about it, back and forth. And no, I don't want to be with you. Well, you have no choice. You're going to be with me. You're just not going to leave me like that. And I said, well, look, I am no longer in a relationship with you. However you want to feel about that, however you want to go about that, that's your problem, but I'm not with you anymore. And she says, okay, whatever you say. And I said, so you can grab your stuff. She's like, nope, I'm not grabbing my stuff. I'm not going nowhere. If you want to claim that we're not together anymore, you can go ahead. But I'm still going to sleep right here in the bed with you, and you ain't going to do shit about it. And this is how we lived for a couple of weeks. And according to me, we're not together. But she lived with me, slept on the same bed, and there was tension in between. And on a Monday morning, on my day off, while she went to school and then to work, when she got out of work and she came over, I changed the lock to the main house's door. And she was trying to get in, and she was knocking because her key wasn't working. And I was in bed the whole time, and I heard her knocks. Ricardo, open the door. No. And all of a sudden, I hear strange noises coming from the living room. And I'm like, what the hell? So I get up, and I'm checking, and all of a sudden, when I reach the living room, here she is creeping through the living room window, breaking in. And I said, what are you doing? She says, well, you're not opening the door. I have to get in somehow. I said, I don't want to be with you anymore. She says, I don't care. I live here still. I live with you. I said, I don't want you to anymore. She says, that's too bad. You're going to have to figure out a way to be happy with it, because I ain't going nowhere. So I told her, I don't want to sleep in the same bed as you. She says, well, then sleep on the ground then. And I did. I slept on the ground for like 2 weeks. And one day, I realized that there was only one way to fix this problem. And that was by moving. And if you're wondering, Ricardo, why didn't you call her mom? Remember her mom told you if anything ever goes wrong, just call me and I'll come pick her up? Listen, as foolish, as stupid as this may sound, this is just the truth. There is no way that I would ever have it in me to call her mom while she's grieving from the loss of her son, and I tell her, come get your daughter. There ain't no way. I couldn't do that. And the truth is, although we had our problems and our tension, I still loved her. And I cared about her deeply. I didn't want anything to happen to her. I wasn't trying to break up because I didn't like her anymore. It was just because she had resentment towards Mexican people because of what happened to her brother. And I realized this. And I had to accept it and learn to move on with my life because of it. But she was just not allowing me. And so I slept on the ground while she slept on the bed. But I realized that the only way for me to fix this problem is for me to leave. So one day, while she went to school in the morning, knowing she had to also go to her part-time job, I decided to leave. As soon as she stepped out the house that morning, on my day off, I started packing all of my stuff. And by the time that she got out of school and also got out of work and came back to the house, I was gone. I ended up changing my phone number so she can't contact me. And she had no idea where the hell I went. And she was just going to have to find out that I'm gone. And that's how I got rid of her. Was it difficult? Not only was it difficult, it was painful. I loved her. I cared about her. But there was no peaceful way to break up with her. And I had to just disappear. I didn't just move out that house to another house nearby. I left the whole town. So she can't find me no matter what. And I kid you not, that was like 15 years ago. And not too long ago, I was pulling up at a gas station. And I walked into the gas station to go pay for the gas. As I was coming out, I seen a Suburban parked behind my car. And it was nighttime. And the person driving that Suburban was just waiting for me to finish so they could insert themselves there to use that gas pump, right? So the person driving that Suburban was wearing a hoodie. And all of a sudden, as I'm pumping gas, the person that was driving that Suburban sticks their head out and stares at me. And I notice the person staring at me. And all of a sudden, the person goes, like, come here, right? And I finish pumping my gas, and I cautiously walk over there. And as I'm approaching, it looks like it's a guy wearing a hoodie, right? So I'm approaching. And finally, when I get close enough to the truck's door, I look at the face of this person, and it is her. This is 15 years or so later. And she says, is your name Ricardo? And I said, yes, it's me. I know who you are. And she looked like in disbelief. In utter disbelief. Oh my God. And she gets out of her truck. And let me tell you something. Whatever this woman was going through and has been living after I left was not easy at all. Because the way that she looked, it literally looked like she lived in a dumpster. Her sweater full of stains. She smelled like a homeless person, a person that doesn't shower every day. She just looked tore up. And you would think that that detail itself would cause me to kind of stay away from her. But nah, on the complete contrary. I knew that if there was a time ever that she needed my compassion the most, it was right here, that night, that moment. So despite the fact that she had a very harsh stench and she just looked really dirty, I opened my arms and I just wrapped my arms around her. I held her and I squeezed her really, really hard. And I said, I'm so happy to see you. And she says, me too. And then I get back and then I kiss her on the forehead. And I said, you have no idea how happy I am to see that you are okay. And she says, me too. I'm glad to see you. And I said, I never stopped caring about you. You know that? I'm sorry that I disappeared. And then she said, I understand why. I said, you do? She says, and I said to her, hey, look at me. Because she put her head down. And then she looked up and I said, I never once ever stopped caring about you. Ever. I always thought about you. I always hoped that you were okay. And she says, really? I said, yes. I promise you. I promise you. That's why I'm really happy to see you right now. I'm so happy. And then she smiled. And then she says, you know who'd be really happy to know that I ran into you? I said, who? She says, my mom. I said, really? She said, yeah. I was like, I would like to say hi to her. And then she says, do you have a phone number? I said, yeah. And usually I'm very hesitant. I'm very hesitant giving away my number. I don't give my number out. And I kind of didn't want to give her my number either. I wanted the past to remain the past. But I'm also going to be completely honest and genuine. The reason why I did give her my number was because I knew, just based on the condition that she seemed that she was in, I didn't want to make her feel rejection in any way, shape, or form. So I gave her my number. And we talked a little more. I said bye to her. And when I got in my car and I drove off, maybe like 8 minutes down the road, my phone was ringing. And I answered it. And it was her. So I pulled over and I talked to her for a little bit. And she says, hey, I'm over here at such and such place, not too far from the gas station where we ran into each other. And I want to see if you want to come out here to hang out for a bit or something. And I said, let me get home real quick and I'll think about it and let you know. And she said, okay. So I didn't end up going. But maybe like 2 days later, she hit me up again. And so I went over. And I think she was staying at somebody's apartment. So I pulled up to the apartments where she asked me to come to. At this point in my life, I had already published that one book that I was writing while I was with her. So I had a copy of it in the back of my car. And so when she asked me, like, what you've been doing with your life, I told her a little bit of what I was doing. And then I reached back to grab that copy of the book and I handed it to her. I said, this is also something that I've been doing with my life. And she grabbed it. And then she looked at me and she says, is this the same book that you were writing when we used to live together? I said, yep. She said, oh my God. Wow, that's crazy. I was like, yep. She's like, that's what's up. And then she pulled out her phone and she says, hey, you want me to call my mom? I'm like, yeah, call her real quick if it's cool. She says, okay. So she calls, right? And then I grabbed my phone. Check this out. I grabbed my phone and I still had a picture that her and I took at one of those 1 hour photo places. And while the phone was ringing, I pulled out that picture and I handed her my phone and showed her the picture. And she was like, you still have it? It's like, she hangs up the phone. She's like, can I have a copy? I was like, of course. So I sent it to her. And then she says, did you have our picture on your phone this whole time? I said, nah. I grabbed the physical copy that we took back in the day and I scanned it and I saved it to my computer. So tonight, when you called me to come, I thought it'd be a good idea to put it on my phone so I could show it to you. She says, oh my God, I can't believe you still have our picture. And I was like, we look good back then, huh? She started laughing. And then she called her mom, right? And so when she received the picture, she forwarded it to her mom. And as a response, her mom called her instead. And she answers. She's like, that's my mom, hold on. And then she puts her mom on speaker. She says, baby, is that boy Ricardo in that picture from back in the day? And she says, yeah. She's like, how you find that old picture? And she says, Mom, you're not going to believe it. Ricardo is literally sitting right here next to me. She's like, girl, you lying. And she says, watch. She hands me the phone. And I'm like, hello? She's like, is this Ricardo? I was like, yeah, how you doing? She's like, oh, I know that's you. I recognize your voice. I started laughing. So we talked for a little bit. And she was like, are you going to stay in touch with my daughter? I said, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And she's, oh my God, I'm excited. I hope I get to see you again. I would love to. La, 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 right? Then we hang up. And then, I said, hey, we're going to hang out another time. I have to go. It's getting late, etc. All right? So boom. End of the night. Say goodbye. And I leave. Maybe about a week later, she calls me. And it was raining really hard. It was winter. It was like December. I answered and she says, hey, Ricardo, are you busy right now? I said, not too much. Why? What's going on? She says, I'm over here at such and such motel. You think you could pick me up and drop me off at that same place where we met up last time in the apartments? I said, let me see how far the motel is from me. And so I checked real quick. And it was only like 15 minutes away. I said, I could pick you up. She says, okay. So I said, I'll text you when I'm outside. Boom. And let me tell you something. I kid you not. I mentioned that when I ran into her at the gas station, she was looking bummy. This woman came out of that motel looking so good. Holy shit. She looked just as good, probably even better, honestly, than she did back in the day. She looked so good. She walked out that motel, got in my car, and I'm like, I didn't say nothing. I just looked at her. I'm like, damn. I said, okay, you ready? She's like, yeah. So as we're driving, I'm about to take the main road to get to the destination. And she says, no, could you go through there? And it was an alley. I said, an alley? She's like, yeah, it's a shortcut. I'm like, okay. So I cut through that alley and I was going really slow. And it was nighttime, And she was like, you could pull over right there. I was like, where? She's like, right there. And it was like the middle of nowhere. It's an alley. It's like, you want me to pull over right there? She's like, yeah. And I pulled over. I was like, okay. I didn't know you wanted to be dropped off here. She says, no, I was going to suck it. I'm like, excuse me? She's like, yeah, what you mean? Like I was going to suck it. Suck what? I said, why? I don't know, to pay you for giving me a ride? And I'm like, Nicole, what are you talking about? She says, oh, you don't want me to pay you? Wait, you mean to tell me that you think that I'm here giving you a ride because I expect payment from you? She says, oh, I'm sorry. I'm just not used to anybody doing anything for free for me. I'm like, I put my car on drive and keep moving. And that's when I realized what she was doing. And the whole drive to the destination, in my head, I thought, so this is what became of you after I left. I was angry with myself. And I started to wonder if I would have stayed with her, would this had happened? But then I also started to believe that if you had stayed with her, maybe you both would have ended up in a really horrible predicament. And it wouldn't just be her in this circumstance, but also you somehow, some way, in something similar. But it made me very sad because I really cared for her. So when we got to the destination, she invited me to come upstairs. And I said, no, who lives there? She says, oh, some people I know. They'll be cool. Don't worry about it. I was like, I don't know. Maybe I should just go home. She's like, please? All right. So I got out the car and we walked up there. She opened the door. We walked in. There was a guy sleeping on the sofa. She went straight to the kitchen. She started making something to eat. And as I was there watching her in that kitchen cooking, I couldn't help but to look at her and look at the woman that I used to know, that I used to love, that I used to have deep feelings for. And she just looked so good. And it was difficult not to see her in that way. I couldn't just see her like it's somebody that I just ran into, somebody that I just met. I was looking at the woman that I used to love, that I still cared about, but that I used to love and was in love with. And it was difficult. In fact, so difficult that while she was cooking, I couldn't help but to approach her. And I walked behind her and I held her waist. And when she felt the tip of my fingers in her stomach, she just let go of the spatula and just held my hands. And I gently turned her over and I looked at her face and I just stared at her. And I gave her like the most tiniest, the most smallest peck, just the most quickest peck known to mankind. I didn't want to tongue kiss her. I didn't want to do too much. I just wanted to just... And she smiled. And then she wanted to kiss more. And I said, here, And I turned her around and I said, just make your food, okay? And I just held her the whole time. I held her. And I'm not going to lie. The whole time that I held her, I was just melting right there. I couldn't help it. And when I caught myself melting, I said, you can't do this. You can't go back to this. This is not the right thing to do. So I backed off and I went to go lean on the wall. And I stared at her as she cooked. And I was painting all kind of scenarios in my head. Like, what if? Would it be different this time? Could we make it work? Somewhere deep inside, did I want it to work? If you want to be honest with you, yes. But also somewhere deep inside, I felt in my gut that this wasn't the right thing to do. I believed that I was going to put myself in a very tough predicament. I was going to place myself in a really bad predicament getting back with her. So as she was there cooking and I just looked at her, after I came to the conclusion that I can't go back to that, without saying a single word, I just began to very quietly step away and walk to the same door that I came in from. When I opened it, I stepped out and quietly closed it, making sure she didn't hear, but also I didn't wake up the guy that was sleeping right there. So I closed it, and as soon as the door was closed, I turned around, and I kid you not, I started sprinting towards my car. When I got in, turned it on quick, and flew out of there. Not too long after, as I was driving away, my phone was ringing, and it was her. And I felt so bad. I really did. And to this day, I believe that that was the right thing to do. And the next morning when I woke up, I went to the phone place to change my phone number so that she was not able to ever contact me again. The positive thing about this story is that I got to find out that she was okay. Perhaps not in the best of circumstances, but she was okay. And that's my story.